should be checked in. If you'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Supervisor Powers.
Creator of all things, lover of all humankind, we remember the many March observances: International Women's Day and National Women's History Month, Employee Appreciation Day, Mardi Gras and Shrove Tuesday, St. Patrick's Day, World Down Syndrome Day, International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade, Red Cross Month, World Hearing Day. Guide us forward and show us ways we can respond to and show our support of the people impacted by these observations. Amen.
Vice Chairman Farry. Who seconded that? We'll have to second it by Facetto. Okay, a motion made and seconded to adopt this evening's agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Carried. I do not see anyone out in the audience, I believe, that's going to speak, but I will announce it in case someone from this time will be allowed for persons to express their opinions on resolution or ordinance that appears on the agenda, as well as any matter over which this body has jurisdiction. Is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to speak? No, and I see no one in the back, so we'll keep right on going. Communication from County Clerk. There is none. Reports from committees, commissions, and boards. Is there none? Not seeing any. We'll move right along. This time we'll have our county executive report, update the long-term planning and next steps. County Executive Damel.
All right, thank you. So I do have a guest with me tonight. This is Ben Waymar. He is the former administrator of Jefferson County and a good friend of mine. He's one of the people that I've connected with WCA to help a pizza guy figure out how to run a county. I'm very grateful for that. So I'm going to give a little bit of overview of some of the things that I asked for and how we got to where we're at. I'm going to give Ben some time to kind of let you know how they used it in Jefferson County to figure out some of their issues. When we have priorities, how do we keep ourselves on the track? And then I'm going to invite our Director of Administration, Jamie Rauch, up to just talk about some next steps, where we're going with strategic plan and what EverStrive is putting together. And I just want to take a second to thank everybody who showed up on Saturday. It was very fun to watch, and it was I think very creative with the wire ties, the pipe cleaner. So there was a lot of art going on, which was fun. So I just want to tell a little story about when I first got here. Of course, I was new to government, trying to figure out, put our finger on the pulse and look at the situation in Winnebago County. And there wasn't a lot of reports or letting us know where we're at. Is our budget true? Are our buildings in good shape? What buildings do we have? Who has what car? So we have done the long process of getting some of the assets that we need to figure out what our situation is. Winnebago County, a little bit of history, was the third executive county in the state of Wisconsin. So there was Milwaukee and Dane because of population, and our citizens decided to do a referendum and go straight to county executive county. Issue is we've never had that form where you go to county administrator, which is what Ben was. And the county administrator form of government is some of that adolescence phase that we kind of skipped over. That's when you get things like a director of administration or a director of public works, and you start tying all these things together and making sure that it's comprehensive as a whole. So I appreciate the board for granting us some of the things along the way, strategic planning, civic clerk agenda software, so we can kind of follow along what's coming through. Even Paul and Jamie working together on our fund balance accounts, that's great. Those summaries will help us a little bit. Getting to priority-based budgeting, allocating money for a strategic plan, which we are on our way for, a facilities condition assessment. Just the baseline of what we have, and again, we're looking at over $60 million over the next 10 years for just maintaining buildings alone. And I often remind people that does not cover runways or parking lots or boat launches or parks. That is just buildings. So the good news is we have gotten this assessment with time and a financial position to make sure that we are going to smooth out the next 10 years or 20 years. So it's just a little bit of the why. Why I've been asking these things from the beginning. Why it was important for me with the friendships and the mentors that I got through Winnebago Counties Association, to be able to talk to not only an administrator in Jefferson County, but also one of the county board, they're not called supervisors in LA, Holly Mitchell, commissioners. So again, LA County, much different from us, 10 million people, 5 county commissioners. She thinks that we're crazy for having 36. I think she's crazy for only having 5. There are literally 2 million people per district in LA County. So when you get these people in this career, in this zone, there are a lot of good people and a lot of good aspects. We at Winnebago County Association, I was recently on a panel for unfunded mandates, and it was between myself, Paul Farrell from Waukesha County, and David Crowley from Milwaukee County, and it was a great conversation. But we really talked about unfunded mandates and some of the other challenges that we have. Not only is revenue not getting there, our net new construction is not keeping up with costs that continue. We are going to have some tough choices coming ahead, and this is going to give us the best opportunity to make those choices. So at this time, I'm going to ask my friend Ben to come up here, talk a little bit about strategic planning and how you tie all these master plans together and what we're why we're doing this. And then I'm going to ask Jamie to come up here and give you the next steps just for EverStrive and the process we have going on.
Well, good evening, and thank you for having me tonight. I was with Jefferson County for about 11 and a half years. I officially left in December, so I'm still relatively fresh in terms of what county government does. But I started in 2013, and one of the first things I asked when I started that role is, what is our strategic plan? And it got pulled off the shelf, and there was some dust with it, and a lot of it was just, it came out when we were doing orientation for new county board members. And this was coming off of, where do we go with Post Act 10, shared revenue sources, what does this look like? And that was the new kid in county government, and how do I work with the team going from running a village to running a county, going from 6 department heads to about, 26 departments, right? And what does that all mean in terms of the future? And so a few years later, we can have the conversation, we should update the strategic plan and looking at the approach of how do we engage our community at large of the future of Jefferson County. Similar to what you've been going through with your process in terms of talking to community partners and what does that vision look like together. And so the mix was a little bit different at first because we brought in partners from local school districts. We brought in making sure we had representatives from folks who were starting families. We made sure that we had a representative of a large city and a town, making sure we had a diverse group of people as we talked about the various situations. And one of the things that we learned very quickly, besides creating the goals, is also the fact is our plans didn't really talk as well as they should have. Meaning our comprehensive plan, our farmland preservation plan, the open space recreation plan, all those plans that we all have to do, and sometimes they said something slightly different, and sometimes you had different policy decisions as a result. And so part of our first goal was coming out of that strategic plan was, guess what, we had to update our comp plan because it was about that time, with the specific goal of how do we make these things talk going forward. So before we got to the comp plan update, we then went to the process of priority-based budgeting, which I know you began the process with Chris and his team going forward. And it was a real eye-opening for our board because they helped join us in that process as we inventoried all the programs They understood how many programs we actually administered. They understood what was mandates from the state, John's favorite topic, right? To what did we do because it was a community mandate, or did we really have to be in that business anymore? We also looked at the quartiles, and ironically, the good thing is as we looked at quartile 1 programs down to quartile 4, spending, for the most part, followed that stream in terms of priorities as well, which is a good gut check for our communities as we went forward. But key things that came out of that were issues also related to how do we engage with broadband and look to the future? How do we look at our transportation? We knew our budget couldn't keep up with transportation. We have more rural cross-sections versus some urban cross-sections that you might have. But how do we get a 30-year plan down to roughly a 20-year plan? And what did that look like? And maybe adjustments of how that process looked going forward. The other key thing that really focuses in is also our facilities. Our courthouse was built in the mid-1950s, a jail addition in the 90s, and we had just got done building a new highway shop replacing something from the 1930s. And so we really hadn't had that conversation what the facilities had to look like. So that was a key part of what that looked like. And that ultimately invested in our human services campus, our courthouse, sheriff, jail, which is all one large facility, and also updating our communication system for 911 and how that integrated with broadband as well. Fast forward was our last strategic plan, and there's 4 goals that came out, and you might be surprised because they sound like yours: quality of life, diverse housing, intentional economic growth, and transformative government. I think it sounds like a few things that you might be heading on the path of as well. We had a lot of conversations on the next steps, and with not knowing I was going to be leaving for a new role, that also became the best transition document that we had. Because it took what our vision was, taking the comprehensive plan of a 10 to 20 year vision of the county and taking down the chunks of what we're going to do in 3 to 5 years with the strategic plan to ultimately prioritize how do we spend and get things done. So some interesting things came out of that though. And a story I kind of like to tell recently was talking about intentional economic growth. For those of you who don't know what Jefferson County is, we're on I-94 right between Milwaukee and Madison. So we're feeling how the growth patterns work, but also the idea of balanced growth between the rural cross-section, but the idea that, hey, we can be a player in that corridor going forward. And the county still had a poor farm. It was actually in this county seat city proper, and it was always a conversation, what do we do with it being in the urbanized service area? And that conversation of economic growth talked about the goals that we wanted to look at growth in those urban service areas, so we kept those other areas a little more preserved for open space and farmland going forward. And the board let us have those conversations when site selections came up. And so at some point a couple of years ago, a company called Kikkoman did a site selection. And we developed what was called a food and beverage industrial park. And that itself was about a $500 million investment within Jefferson County. That didn't spur to, before I left, another company from Finland looking at committing about a $300 million project. In 2024, there's about 1.25 million tax credit billion dollars, excuse me, of tax credit programs that Jefferson County got, and part of that conversation was how do we talk about economic growth and a positive, constructive, balanced approach. And that was because of the board and staff and the community working together on a strategic plan. The other key thing was related to housing. So we did sell the property to Kikkoman, and a portion of those funds, $1 million, went into what we call the Live Local Development Fund. It's about a $10 million fund now, about $9.5 million, which created gap financing for all our communities in Jefferson County. And we built partnerships with the foundation, which I now run, one of our local hospitals, a local bank, and another community foundation to build it, and it's still growing. Again, when we came to the board to have those conversations, does this make sense for our community? The strategic planning process and a priority-based budgeting was some of the things that helped lead us to an easier yes to move forward. But as we left, we also looked at other ways to make sure we stuck with that plan, and we're accountable back to the board of what that looked like. So an example is you typically have the fiscal notes on resolution ordinances that go before you. We added a section for strategic plan, and we made sure there's a note to the board and the public of if this resolution is going forward, what goal did this tie to in the strategic plan? Now, if there needed to be a pause because it didn't fit that, there could be a good conversation, but it made sure there was alignment. If you go into the Jefferson County budget book, and this started a while ago, but it accelerated every time we did a strategic plan, every department has how they relate certain goals of their operation, aligns with strategic plans, and key performance indicator. Every department has the budget book, so if you want to kind of look at that, go take a look at the Jefferson County budget so you can see what that looked like. And that's how we made sure there's accountability of how the dollars are spent on behalf of the taxpayers, as it relates to strategic goals that the public through the county board asks us to do. And so as we look forward, as the county looks forward, they continue to work on their next cycle of priority-based budgeting right now because they just approved that about a year ago, and there's some things that they had to work through. But again, it's a great transition document to talk through the future and the goals and how do we combine these common goals between the public, the board, and the staff, and ultimately how they execute it and be protective of those taxpayer dollars we're responsible for. So, Mr. County Executive, if there's anything else?
Yeah, for the record, I do believe every board supervisor got a free bottle of soy sauce.
Yeah, as we said, so the groundbreaking was, it happened to be on my 25th wedding anniversary, so I joked with my wife, I gave her a very nice lunch and dinner for our 25th wedding anniversary with about 300 of our closest friends. But they literally built a tent city on the grounds where we had a nice buffet. Governor Thompson was there, Governor Evers was there, Misty Hughes, Secretary Hughes was there, and a lot of other folks. It was a great celebration, and we went downtown Milwaukee that night as well. So Hikuman knows they have a gathering.
So we need to go after a sriracha plant, maybe not. I would, that's one of my favorite things, although it's probably smells a little bit. But back to the strategic plan and, you know, how we're trying to look forward. This is really the type of thought process, the type of understanding that's really going to bring our county together. It's going to start bridging some of those divides that we have between Neenah, Menasha, and Fox Crossing, and Oshkosh, and Winneconne, and Omro, and West. This is how we figure out what is our plan for Winnebago County, what is our brand for Winnebago County, where can we grow, and where do we need to just let be? Because every township has that kind of right. To do as the local government wants to. But really, this is how we can start steering ourselves in those directions. So not only on every agenda item report will we have a fiscal note attached to it, we'll also be able to attach to where does it fit our strategic plan. And if it doesn't, then we can have that conversation. And if you can clearly see that, say, hey, how does this thing that you want us to give you match where we're trying to go together? And with that, before I have Jamie come up on next steps on Everest Drive, I'd like to open up for any questions between me and Ben. Was that under 20 minutes? Are we good on that still? Okay. All right.
Supervisor Holt.
I really appreciated the strategic planning workshop this weekend. That was fun, invigorating, all of those kind of things. How often do you envision we should be doing this once we have a firmed up strategic plan that we're starting to rally around?
Well, in my perfect world, and of course it'll be up to all of us, I would say every 4 years. I would say just before there is another county executive election, right? It ties out well because then the board can kind of say this is what we want to, because really you're the policy drivers, right? So I think that would be a good time to set it up, and then when that election happens, whoever's in that seat gets to figure out the best way to kind of implement to those goals. So a lot of them are recommended every 5 years, but I think there's a weird gap there. I think there should be a refresh every 4 years, but it's something you could definitely, it's not something you lock in stone. So every year in your budget, you can look and say, hey, are we accomplishing these goals? Is it time to kind of adjust some of these things? And that's what we'll do with priority-based budgeting.
Okay.
Supervisor Barrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for Ben. Maybe if you can comment. As far as, in fact, I just checked out your website for your strategic goals. Did you guys also develop kind of a vision of what your mission is as a county? Because our goals drive us towards a vision ultimately. And do you keep that in front and center also?
We do. So I think a couple things that carry through. So when I talk about that first strategic plan, the mission and value statements were kind of there already of where we go forward. As we transition to that second strategic plan that we ran, we kind of created guiding principles, value statements. And part of the reason we did the guiding principles is try to make sure we included all the staff of how they were part of this plan. They maybe weren't a part of the housing program, right? So how can they connect up to that, but having those guiding principles help connect to their departments, the overall value statement of being public servants and moving the mission forward of the organization. And so that was some of the key parts that we added into there, and those have continued forward. And if you look at the budget, it kind of carries that forward then too. And then ultimately we created an implementation strategy. So there's actually a dashboard internally that's provided to the county board on a quarterly check-in to show how we're doing on stuff. No, not we anymore. I'm getting still bad at that. The county did. That would be a report out to them in terms of specific metrics and how they were doing as well.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Schellinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you tell us some of the other steps involved in finalizing or creating the strategic plan besides the board's input?
Yep, I will bring up Director Rauch for that. And it is Skellinger, right? Because I'm trying to make sure I have it right. Is that correct?
Yeah, Skellinger.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Just really quick. The next steps, what we're going to do, just to go off of what George was asking us, I got a framework today from Meredith and Everstrive. We also have a vision. We also have the guiding principles in that framework, and we're going to build upon that as we go. So the next steps are, yesterday we met with the department heads, all of the department heads, for a workshop as well. It went really well, as from my perspective anyway. And so moving forward, then we're working with Meredith, and we're going to hopefully get a draft by the 12th of March. And we're going to, as a staff, review that draft. We're going to have that conversation and hopefully bring back, Meredith should be back here on the 18th to do the final presentation with you all.
Thank you. Is there any other input from the public or any other stakeholders other than the county board and department heads?
So I brought my list up here because I was wondering if y'all were going to ask me that. So I just want to read it just to make sure that, so input was collected through surveys, one-on-one interviews, and focus groups with county supervisors, county administration, department leaders, and key community partners, representatives from local organizations that include city officials, school district staff, Oshkosh Economic Development Corporation, Fox Cities Convention and Visitors Bureau, and Discover Oshkosh. All of those were able to give some feedback, give some insights to them, and they went also and took the framework that was developed last year with priority-based budgeting and Resource X. They also incorporated that along with all the focus groups and the feedback. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you. And then just, is there any opportunity for there to be, I mean, maybe other than like at a board presentation, is there any availability for the public at large to provide input either before something has been created or after?
I would say this is a living document. So this first draft that they are going to present to you, hopefully on the 18th, that would be a time for the public too as well. But then, as John said, that we're going to just keep reviewing it. So the next steps after you see us with the strategic plan, then comes the scoring of the priority-based budgeting. And so then what, you may already know this, but I'll just try to restate it. The department heads are going to go back in, and all of those program inventories, they're going to score against the strategic plan that you all have set. Once that's done, then you're going to have that peer review group. And however we plan to set that up, you can have community stakeholders, you can have people buy in on that peer review if that's what you choose. And then they'll come in, and that peer review group is to look at the goals and then look at those program inventories and to really essentially score them yourselves, and then we compare the two scores, really to get an unbiased view of the scoring metrics and where those program inventories sit. And then once that's done, then you have a full picture of here is all the programs that we as the county provide, and here is how they align with our goals and our priorities and our objectives. And then once we have that, then we put the dollars and cents to it. Now you're going to see how much money that we as the county we use to contribute to all of our goals. And then you can look at resource allocation and look at maybe there's some programs that don't align with our goals. What do we do with that? Those are all the questions that you all get to look at, and the public, depending on how you set that up, moving forward. So that's why I called it a living document, because you're constantly looking at it, reviewing it, making those changes, and using it to guide your budget conversation.
May I answer that as well? So think of it a little bit like priority-based budgeting. So year one was very high level. Here's just the programs, what it costs, right? And then we're going to get into, does it tie in with our strategic plan, and does it tie into our priorities, and is it mandated, is it not? So that's the next level that it'll get to. Same thing with strategic plan. So it's going to be really a baseline. Here's some high-level goals that we have to set it for the county, but also to train and educate you as the supervisors better, to get out in your community and be like, what do you think of the plan? Right? What do you think of our goals? Do you think we're heading in the right direction? And I think that's probably the biggest flaw that I saw 4 years ago. When I was first elected, it was here, Mary Ann said, here's the book of ethics, chapter 5917 is your chapter, and good luck. Right? Much like when a lot of you were elected, we have a lot of new supervisors. There wasn't a lot of onboarding. I mean, the meeting that you all came to when my colleague was still here, that was the second one that we had done in, did we ever do orientation meetings? Right. So it's our job to kind of train you a little bit more what this role means, right? It means that as supervisors, you all represent roughly 4,200 people. You should be trying to talk to your neighbors. You should be doing those town halls. So to your point is, how do I give you the tools to make that easier, right? How do I train some of those things up to make that easier to do? That was one of the downfalls with the one of the public health grants that we declined, was really to get out and listen to people. So my thought process of that, to get out there with the supervisors in those districts to hear feedback about the pandemic, right? And it didn't happen, but it doesn't mean we can't help for those things to happen. We should be getting out in our communities, and you should be getting out talking to the 4,200 people you represent for that feedback. And we'll do our job to make sure that we're hitting those high-level stakeholders, those school administrators. Does that kind of make sense? Some of those CEOs. Make sure we're bringing in the foundations and United Ways and the Habitats of the world. Well, you guys are out there talking to your citizens. Do we all align? What do we kind of get into? So this first one is going to be very high level, pretty lofty. Maybe some of our goals look too narrow. Maybe some of our priorities are too wide, but we'll figure that out together. And then just kind of dial in. So I agree. It is a living, breathing document.
Then, okay, one hopefully quick answer. If the public's going to be able to provide input on the meeting at the 18th, will there be something in our packets on the 11th for the public to review so that they can provide input? Because otherwise, public comment comes before they would see a presentation.
Yeah, Jamie, do you have, I think we're just doing a final presentation. We're not actually asking to adopt it on the 18th? Are we asking to adopt it on the 18th?
We were going to ask for a resolution for that so that we could move forward and get the budget process rolling with the scoring and those kind of things.
So for priority-based budgeting, sure.
So does that mean there's going to be things for the public to review before the presentation?
Yeah, I would hope so. Yep.
Maybe in draft form, and then the final, I would have to work with the clerk to figure out how we can make that work, but we will at least have a draft. How about that?
It feels really rushed to me to present, to not have the final version available to the public when we haven't sought an open public input on a strategic plan that affects the entire county.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest that we slow it down and get it on a track that allows for the public to provide meaningful input after digesting information in the same way that this board should be able to. Thanks.
Supervisor Frusetto, was your question answered? Supervisor Powers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a good idea when you had said that it would be a good idea to do this every 4 years. If we did do that, I would suggest that if it's before the primaries, that anyone who has filed for county executive be invited to attend, and if it's after the primaries, then whoever the next county executive is and his or her opponent, because it would be a good way of getting, making sure that whoever's the next one is hitting the ground running.
Well, to be clear, the priorities is the responsibility of the board, and it's not mine. I could have easily said what we did with Resource X was fine, and just we talked it out. We had plenty of conversations on that, and said these are good. Let's do it. I didn't feel like I had buy-in in the board, so we wanted to take another kick in, and we did slow it down, and I appreciate your comments on that. But really, the strategic plan and the priorities needs to be of this body, not of this body. And that's a real separation that I'm trying to be clear on.
Supervisor Hintz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if Director Elder has talked to you about this or not, but I know he and I have discussed that with our facilities master plan, facilities coming back. We're looking at hopefully trying to implement some of that into the county tour, some of those recommendations. I don't know if he's done that to you, and if he has, I see you nodding, so I'm guessing he has.
Yeah.
What are we looking at? Is that, because I know this is part of what you're talking about here and trying to implement.
So they're still looking at a few options for a path forward. Some of the things that we're trying to reconcile is we have master plans that are in direct conflict with themselves. Master plan for solid waste is kind of encroaching on some of the future growth of highway, which is kind of encroaching on some of the future growth with the jail, which we built on where was supposed to be our next landfill. So we are trying to figure that out and come up with the best path forward for this. I mean, it's hard for the clerk to come and set up this board meeting when it doubles as a courtroom, and all this equipment has to show up today, and then you have to get it all out of here. And you know, Chairman Egan, you don't have necessarily equipment set up strictly for a board meeting to make it easier. So yeah, we have a couple of parts of master planning separately that have been done in different departments that aren't really tied together. So we're working on bringing some options to you on that.
Thank you.
Supervisor Burrow, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question, I believe, directed to our guests. So, Ben, talk a little bit about the board. Post-strategic plan, you developed it. How has the board changed? I mean, and the reason I say that is sometimes boards can get very much focused on the forest, or the trees rather, than versus looking at the whole forest. Do they become more strategic? Do they get more focused on policy making? Does it change over time because you're more guided by a strategic plan?
I think there are some different conversations. Our board was very open to us trying new things, as an example. So we set up the 501c3. It became our economic development organization, as an example, right? I talked about the Live Local Development Fund. We developed a youth crisis stabilization facility that had some exposure, but they were willing to go with it because they saw that need going forward. So I think in certain areas they were more strategic. And there's some areas, depending on what was being discussed with their constituents, it was a little more localized. I think the benefits is probably what you experienced with your planning session is we did it with the department heads. And so that relationship between board members and department heads was also improved in some cases. I think there's just an openness of what everyone did that was positive. And in some cases, when we did the scoring the first time around, we did both times. Certain board members would sit on those peer scoring teams to help with the process to kind of really, again, it was an education process more than anything and a team building exercise too.
Great, thank you.
Supervisor Holt, second time.
Thank you. At some point, can we get a list of all of the organizations that you all reached out to have input on the strategic plan? I just want to make sure that Neenah Joint School District, not just Oshkosh School District was involved, Menasha School District was involved. I just want to make sure we're going through all of our constituents.
Yep, we had a few corporations that we couldn't get in touch with, or they didn't respond. A few people were busy themselves and declined. We also reached out to Amcor and Oshkosh Corp. And
Good.
Kimberly Clark and Menasha Corporation and some others, but yep.
Good. So you can get us that list?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone on? No. I have see no other questions at this time.
All right, I thank you, and I'll see you later on this
Okay.
agenda.
Thank you both. Okay, the next thing is my report, excused supervisors. We have Supervisor Bender, Belleville, Harrison, Gilbertson, Zelmer, and I know Supervisor Gustafson's at another meeting, so he will need to be excused. So other than that, unless anyone has any particular question for me, we're going to move right along. Next is presentations. We have a progress update for the ad hoc task force of the rules of the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors by Chairman Conley Hanson. I just want to tell you that he's just going to tell what's going on this and that. There's not going to be no discussion as far as that goes. He'll tell you what his plans is to go from there. There'll be no vote of any kind whatsoever on there. So listen very closely, and Supervisor or Chairman of the task force, Conley Hanson, will go ahead and tell you what to do and what he'd like to have you do. Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my apologies for not getting up in front. Pain's a little high today, and so the chairman has graciously granted me an opportunity to visit from here to you. I made a couple of notations while I was in a waiting room. Very grateful for the opportunity to speak with you. As you know, last April, the Rules Task Force was created to address any inconsistencies, any open-ended interpretation, maybe a lack of definition, and even that there were competing rules that were in conflict from one section to another. It was then that we created Section 26 for this task force. Now, some of the meetings have been very long. Some of them have been extremely heated in exchanges in the quest to improve what we have in front of us. And then a few months ago, I directed all task force members to author any clarification or changes so that it is posted on Civics Plus, so any member of the board or the residents of Winnebago County can see exactly what's being discussed even before we gavel in for that particular meeting. In the packet that you have today are all of the resolutions that are separated by section. My goal is to avoid a complete document dump all at once for a single presentation that would come to this board for a vote. The Section 26 that we created for this task force specifically said that we are not to address committee structures or organization. For that reason, Sections 23 and 24 will not, nor will they be included or placed on any agendas. The resolutions that you see again are by each resolution is by section and by no means final. They are all malleable and amendable. A greater purpose for being on the special orders meeting tonight is for all of the supervisors that are of the county to see exactly what is in the pipeline. As these are not up for a vote, as Chairman Egan said, tonight what I'm really hoping for is to invite feedback from each of you, anything that you like, dislike, want to see omitted or amended. I would ask that you please email me those concerns, and Supervisor Hancock, Cook, Ponzer, and Hintz have already come up with some great ideas. And again, if you would just please email those to me. Our next meeting is March 13th. With each and all of your email concerns, I am going to make a bullet point presentation on each item to present, and I would like that to be an exhibit on Civics Plus for everyone to see what each other's concerns are between all of the 36 supervisors. Again, as nothing is up for a vote, I would always appreciate your feedback, but please email that to me because there's no reason to make this a lengthy discussion or meeting. First and foremost, absolute gratitude to the Office of Corporation Counsel, Mary Ann, Tori, and Reese for their attention to detail in putting these resolutions forward. This often included re-listening to every single meeting and the meeting in its entirety to make sure that the notes, the minutes, and the resolutions were absolutely accurate as to what we put forward. Also, the Office of Corporation Counsel did extensive legal research that involved visiting with other counties as well as getting legal opinion from the Wisconsin Counties Association. Cassie, a great thank you in the clerk's office for helping me organize everything always and putting it on the agenda for Civics Plus. and also to Julie, who was doing the minutes for a good portion of the time. She also re-listened to meetings to make sure that everything was accurate. And to the task force members, Supervisors Harrison, Powers, Cox, Halber, Dowling, and Swan, very grateful for the opportunity to work with you. Each of them have put forward some great ideas and thoughts moving forward. You will note in your packet, there is some, you will note on Civics Plus as an exhibit, there is something from Supervisor Dowling that shows an intent and a reason for some of the rule changes that were submitted. I would encourage you all to take a look at that. Shortly, you will also get another one from Supervisor Dowling that she put together on the purpose and some of the progress. That's really all I have. Please take some time to go through those resolutions. Again, our next meeting is March 13th. I will write all sections except for the ones regarding committees 23 and 24 are on the agenda. So everything is open for discussion, amendable, and malleable. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Supervisor Hanson, and all 7 of you that are on that task force. I know it gets to be some long nights. You think here, you should come in and sit on some of them, but they're doing a good job. They're going over it, so thank you much. So, Supervisor Dowling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The videos are so long, which is why I put together the packet of reasoning and intent for everyone to look at. All in total, we have spent 33 hours and 51 minutes discussing what you see so far. Our longest meeting was 4 hours and 14 minutes long. So when we present what we've presented, I just want to reiterate the fact that none of this was done lightly. It was done with great passion, much debate, and lots of Advil. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Like I said, don't forget to get your stuff into Supervisor Hanson if you see any changes you'd like to see changed. All right. If the county executive would come back up here in a second, I am going to ask that we entertain a motion to convene the County Board of Supervisors into closed session for discussion on the closure of the UWO Fox Cities campus under Wisconsin State Statutes 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investigation of public funds, or conducting other specific public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Do I?
Second, Dowling.
Motion made and seconded. All right, we'll have to have a roll call.
Dowling.
Here.
Laux. Here. Albrecht.
Yes, here.
Lutz.
Here.
Holt.
Yes, here.
Reinke.
Here.
Hancock Cook.
Here.
Wise.
Yes.
Nussbaum.
Here.
Stafford.
Here.
Patterson.
Here.
Gabbert's not here.
Gabert's not here.
Binder is not
Not
here.
here.
Swan.
Present.
Gilbertson's not here.
Gilbert's not here.
Miller.
Here.
Halbert's not here.
No.
Panzer.
Here.
Belleville. It's not here.
Not here.
Mako.
Here.
Hintz.
Present.
Zelmer.
Not here.
Skellinger.
Yes.
Buck.
Here.
Powers. Hanson. Cox.
Here.
Gustafson. Not here. Bureau.
Here.
Fari.
Here.
Harrison. Not here.
Not here.
Frasetto. Egan.
Yes.
O'Brien. Nelson. Miller.
Yes.
Okay, at this time, someone who wants to close the doors, please. They need to be closed. I have no problem. Right, I'm fine with that. So at this time, the only ones that should be left in here then is the ones from the county executive's office and the ones from Corporation Council.
Staff and board?